There's this moment that almost every late diagnosed neurodivergent person describes to me. They all use different words, but the feeling is the same. It's like someone handed them a pair of glasses they didn't know they needed. And suddenly everything they've been squinting at for years, every relationship that ended badly, every fight that didn't make sense, every time they were told they were too much, snaps into focus. It makes so much more sense now. That sentence carries so much meaning and grief and hope. If you said it, if you felt it, if you're in the middle of it right now, this episode is for you. This is the Neurodivergent Love Lab. I'm registered provisional psychologist Jenna Dalton, and this is episode 2, the one where your relationship history suddenly makes sense. Let me tell you about something I see in my practice constantly. A client comes in. She's usually in her 30s or 40s. She's been to therapy before, maybe multiple times, usually multiple times. She's seen so many different therapists. She's read the relationship books. She's done the communication exercises. She knows all the classics, like using I statements and following the feelings scripts. You know the ones. When you blank, it makes me feel blank, and what I need in that moment is blank. She has so much self-awareness. She can tell me exactly what's happening, maybe even using therapeutic jargon she's picked up from watching #relationship advice reel after reel on Instagram, trying to get some traction. She's frustrated because she knows what's happening. She just can't figure out why it keeps happening, when she's using all the tools she can find to fight against it over and over. She can even see the conflict unravel in real time, see it like a train coming, and she just can't stop it. She's tried, and she's exhausted because nothing has worked the way it was supposed to. And then, sometimes it's a TikTok video. Sometimes it's a friend's diagnosis. Sometimes it's her own kid being assessed and she realizes, wait, that sounds like me. However it happens, the idea pops into her brain and she can't shake the thought, do I have ADHD? Am I autistic? Do I have both? And then there's this before and after the diagnosis moment that happens. Whether that's an official diagnosis that was sought out from a professional or a self-diagnosis, because let me be very clear on my stance around diagnosis. Self-diagnosis is valid, and it is certainly a valid place to start. You don't need a piece of paper to prove what you instinctively know to be true. You've been reading about neurodiversity for months, maybe longer. Every article, every TikTok, every late-night Reddit thread hits you somewhere deep, and you think, this is me. This is literally describing my entire life, my entire existence. But then the next thought lands. But I haven't been officially diagnosed, so maybe I'm just making it up. Maybe I'm not actually neurodivergent, and I probably shouldn't describe myself that way. Let me be very clear. You do not need a formal diagnosis to start understanding how your brain works, to use strategies that help neurodivergent people thrive, or to build a relationship that actually fits your wiring. A diagnosis can be a powerful tool, but it's not the only door into self-understanding. And for a lot of people, that's a door that's locked, expensive, or hidden behind a 2-year waiting list. Let's be honest, because it's worth naming the reality. Getting a formal ADHD or autism assessment, as an adult especially, is genuinely difficult. It's not as simple as booking an appointment and walking out with answers. For many people, significant barriers stand in the way. Excessive cost, long wait lists, gender and cultural bias, late identification. These are all barriers to getting a diagnosis. In the neurodivergent community, there's been a long and ongoing conversation about self-identification versus formal diagnosis. And while there will always be differing opinions, here's where I land as a clinician. You are the leading expert on your own brain. Nobody has spent more time inside your head than you have. They haven't felt the way your attention fractures when you're understimulated, or experienced the sensory overwhelm at a family dinner that left you unable to speak for an hour, or know what it feels like when your partner asks a simple question and your entire nervous system treats it like a threat and you simply can't do it. A clinician can offer assessment tools, clinical language, and a formal label that opens doors to accommodations and medication. That has real value. But they are observing you for a handful of hours. You've been living with your brain for your entire life. Self-identification doesn't mean self-diagnosis in the clinical sense. It means recognizing patterns in yourself, naming them, and using that understanding to make your life and your relationships work differently, work better. And that's something you're allowed to do right now, today, without anyone's permission. The real question isn't, do I have a diagnosis? The real question is, does understanding my brain through a neurodivergent lens help me make sense of my life and my relationships? If the answer is yes, if reading about ADHD makes your entire relationship history suddenly make sense, if learning about autistic communication patterns explains why you've always felt misunderstood or misperceived, if understanding pathological demand avoidance, or PDA, finally gives you language for why you resist even the things you want to do, if knowing about rejection-sensitive dysphoria helps you understand why an offhand comment can be so crippling, then that understanding is yours. It belongs to you, and no one gets to gatekeep your self-knowledge. Now that we're on the same page about what constitutes a diagnosis, you can probably tell I'm a little bit passionate about this, hey? Let's talk about the shift that happens in that before and after the diagnosis moment. So, back to the client who often walks through my door. Before the diagnosis, every relationship problem was personal. I'm bad at communication. I'm too sensitive. I push people away. I can't do this right. After the diagnosis, she recognizes that there's something else at play. She's neurodivergent. She figures clearly this has something to do with what keeps happening in my relationship, but she's not quite sure how to figure out what exactly is going on. She needs answers. So she books a session with me, and I remind her that her brain isn't broken. She's simply neurodivergent in a world designed for neurotypical brains. And the more we talk, the more she realizes the problems that she thought were all her fault have deeper nuance. That she shuts down during conflict because her nervous system gets overwhelmed, not because she doesn't care. Or that her brain has a natural tendency to hyperfocus at the beginning of a relationship because it's giving her a really lovely boost of dopamine from that novelty. And that's not love bombing. Or that she really truly needs more processing time after a conflict. It's not avoidance or stonewalling. Stonewalling is purposely shutting your partner out in an emotionally manipulative way. That's not what's happening. It's her brain trying to make sense of what happened. Same behaviors, completely different story. She has a, it makes so much more sense now moment. That shift, that's one of the most powerful things I witnessed as a psychologist. And it's also one of the most complex. Because it's not just relief, it's grief too. Let me explain why this moment hits so hard. When you go through life without knowing you're neurodivergent, you tell a story about yourself. And that story is usually built on self-blame, shame, judgment, criticism. You collect evidence. The relationship that ended because you wouldn't talk about your feelings. The partner who said you were too intense at first and then completely checked out. The pattern of feeling utterly rejected when your partner makes a tiny criticism and trying to pretend it didn't hurt that much while slowly dying inside, and then it coming out later in a way that surprises your partner and starts a fight. The way conflict shuts you down and makes your partner feel shut out, but you quite literally can't say anything. The words don't come. It's like your voice box stopped working. You build a story around all of it. I'm the problem. A diagnosis doesn't erase the story, but it rewrites the narrative. Instead of, I'm the problem, the story becomes, my brain works differently, and I've been trying to operate in a world that wasn't designed for my operating system. I've been trying to use relationship advice that wasn't built for my unique brain. It's like you've been walking around with the wrong prescription lenses in your glasses for decades. And during this aha moment, I often say to my clients, let's be honest, this is an explanation, not an excuse. It explains your patterns of behavior, but it doesn't mean that those patterns of behavior are something we should just assume are okay or behaviors that should just keep happening. They're still causing challenges. So we need to tap into those patterns to figure out how to navigate the world and your relationships differently and adapt, build tools, build strategies to make the challenging bits less challenging. Just knowing, just that self-awareness, that doesn't solve your problems. You know this, right? You've built this self-awareness. You know what's happening for you, but the problems are still there. And that is true, but knowing that initial stage of self-awareness, that can help you take the first steps towards change. So let me walk you through some of the most common patterns of internal narrative that I see my clients start to rewrite after they're diagnosed. Pattern number 1, the hyperfocus to withdrawal cycle. Before the diagnosis, this looks like I fall hard and then I lose interest. I guess I'm just incapable of having long-term relationships. After the diagnosis, this looks like my ADHD brain produces massive amounts of dopamine when there's novelty. So in the newness of the early stages of the relationship, it was a dopamine feast. And then when the novelty naturally faded, so did the dopamine. That makes sense. It wasn't that I stopped loving them. My brain chemistry shifted, and I didn't have tools to navigate the transition. There's still love, there's still attraction. It just shifted. I actually have an entire episode on this pattern planned because it is so common. But for now, just notice the difference. Character flaw versus neurology. Shame versus understanding. Pattern number 2, the conflict shutdown. Before diagnosis, this looks like I freeze during fights. I can't speak. My partner thinks I don't care. Maybe I really don't care enough. After the diagnosis, this looks like my nervous system is going into a freeze response because it's overwhelmed. This is a neurological protective mechanism, not emotional unavailability. I need processing time, not more pressure to engage and solve the problem. This is another massively common response that I'll definitely be giving more airtime in future episodes as well. Pattern number 3, the masking collapse. Before a diagnosis, this looks like I'm a completely different person at home than I am at work or at school. My partner gets the worst version of me. I'm a terrible partner. After a diagnosis, this looks like I've been masking all day, managing my tone, suppressing my stims, performing in a really, in all honesty, neurotypical way for 8+ hours. By the time I get home, my regulatory resources are completely depleted. My partner isn't getting the worst version of me. They're getting the real version of me, the most honest version, who happens to be utterly exhausted after masking all day. And we need to build our relationship around that reality. I need to work on building resources, strategies to help me cope with masking fatigue, to unravel the shame and the blame from this all. Pattern number 4, rejection sensitivity. Before a diagnosis, this looks like I overreact to everything. A small comment sends me spiraling. I'm too sensitive. After a diagnosis, this looks like I experience rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. My brain interprets perceived rejection with an intensity that doesn't match the situation. It's not that I'm too sensitive. My brain's threat detection system is simply miscalibrated to a certain extent, and I need tools to manage the moments when it fires. Pattern number 5, demand avoidance. Before diagnosis, this can look like when my partner asks me to do something, I feel this intense pull to just not do the thing. It's like every bone in my body is saying no. So I just don't do it. Then I feel like a bad partner who doesn't care. After a diagnosis, this can look like I have pathological demand avoidance, PDA. When my sense of autonomy feels threatened, I feel this urge to rebel and not do what's asked of me. It's not because I don't care or that I'm lazy or vindictive. It's a neurological drive that makes it challenging for me to meet other people's expectations some or all of the time. Again, it's not a you problem. It's part of your neurology. Do you see what's happening here? The behaviors haven't changed. Your reactions to the situation haven't shifted. But the framework for understanding how you are in relationships has changed completely. And that matters. That gives a whole new meaning to your experiences. That gives you a deeper sense of understanding about why you behave the way that you do. Here's where I want to get practical, because the "it makes so much more sense now" moment isn't the end. Again, right? This self-awareness, it's the beginning. And what you do with this new self-awareness and understanding, that's what matters. The first thing I want to name is that this moment is not just joy in knowing, relief in knowing. It's also painful. Because if your brain has always worked this way, and it has, then every relationship you've been in was affected by something you didn't know about. And there's grief in that. Grief for the relationships that might have survived if you had the right tools. Grief for the years of self-blame when you thought it was all your fault and that something was wrong with you. Grief for the version of yourself who performed because she didn't know there was another option. That grief is real, and it deserves space. Don't rush past it. Grief is not just a beloved person or animal dying. Grief is knowing things could have been different had you known. Allow yourself to grieve what could have been. This is an important part of the neurodivergent process. At the same time, there's also something incredibly hopeful about this moment. Because if the problem was never that you're bad at love, if the problem was that you didn't have the right tools for your uniquely beautiful brain, then the solution isn't to become a different person, it's to get better tools. When you're trying to cut bread with a butter knife, you don't blame the bread for being bread. You just get a different knife. So even though your brain has a natural tendency to think in black and white, either or, I encourage you to hold both truths, both the grief and the hope. They're not contradictions. They're companions. You can experience both grief and hope at the same time. Here's one thing you can do this week. Just this one thing. Take a relationship pattern that's always bothered you, one you've always blamed yourself for, and ask, what if this isn't a character flaw or something wrong with me? What if this is my brain trying to protect me, keep me safe? What might actually be happening neurologically? What is it trying to protect me from? Rejection? Abandonment? Failure? All of the above? Something else? You don't need to have the answers just yet. You just need to start asking different questions. Stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, how is my neurodivergence showing up right now? Or what is my brain trying to protect me from? Here's what I want you to take from today. A late diagnosis doesn't change who you are, but it changes how you understand who you are. And in relationships, understanding is everything. The number of clients who walk through my door and say, my relationship would be so much better if my partner and I just understood each other better. That's so key. Remember, you're not broken. You never were. You were just trying to run a program on hardware that wasn't designed for you. You were cutting bread with a butter knife. And now you know what hardware you have. Now you know you need a different knife. If this episode hit home for you, find me on Instagram or TikTok at Neurodivergent Love Lab and send me a message. I'd love to hear about your unique experience in navigating love, how this episode hit home for you, what your experiences have been like. And share this episode with a partner, friend, family member. My goal is to unravel the feelings of shame and blame from the neurodivergent experience. I'm Jenna Dalton. Your brain isn't broken. It's beautiful. I'll talk to you soon.